and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Committee Member Brandt.
Here.
Committee Member Riggs. Here. Committee Member DeLong.
Here.
Committee Member Johnstone. Here. And Chairperson Pittman.
Here.
And Advisory Member C.
Here.
Advisory Member Young.
Here.
Advisory Member Steindorf. Advisory Member Grover.
Here.
And Advisory Member Wright.
All right, thank you all. Just a quick order, I'd like to introduce everyone in the room to our new city administrator, Brian Ring. This is, I think, his first SBF meeting, if I remember. Yeah, all right. We've been tasking him every day, so he's kind of hesitant to even talk to us. All right, consent agenda. Anyone have a question about the consent agenda? The items are approval of minutes and then receive the financial reports. Any questions or council or committee inquiry?
I make a motion we accept.
I second.
Motion seconded. Anyone on the question? If so, let's call the vote, please. Somebody punch your button.
Oh,
Motion carries with 5. Hold on. Sorry, it won't log it if it's not. Motion carries with 5 yeses
is.
and 0 noes.
Excellent. Hearing of non-agenda, or hearing of individuals on non-agenda items, this is time for the committee to hear about something that someone has that's not on the agenda. Anyone in the room like to bring that forward?
Mr. Mayor, I do not have any public speaker cards.
Thank you. Seeing none, we'll move on to regular business. The first item of regular business is number 3, selection of Parks and Trails Ad Hoc Committee. Through extensive discussions and negotiations, I'm going to appoint council member or committee member Riggs and committee member Brandt to the ad hoc committee for that Trails Committee, and we're very happy that they both volunteered to serve. Looking forward to them helping out with our trail issues. And
I'll facilitate it.
thank you, yes. And we have our committee member, Noss, has just entered the room, just to note. Canals, excuse me, I got it wrong. I need to be corrected. Thank you very much. Item number 4, draft letters of SBF supporting agencies. The SBF committee will discuss the draft letters of the SBF supporting agencies with a recommendation. Go ahead.
At the previous meeting, the chairperson had directed me to put together some draft letters, which I did, sent them off to him. He looked at them, he decided, to send them to legal for review. I have not yet gotten the review back from Scott Huber, have asked him a couple of times, but we thought we would put them on the agenda today so the steering committee could have at least the opportunity to read what the thought process was. And the thought process was to thank and further encourage the 3 advisors that the letters were going to. One had a concern, which would be state parks, regarding some of the trails. The other with DWR to encourage them to do anything and everything within their power to get the FERC license signed and approved, so this committee can be spending and awarding money to worthy projects. And then the third letter that was going out was to state water contractors to remind them of a commitment that is part of Appendix B, which calls for them to provide funding or a grant writer during the beginning of the SBF official term after the license is signed. The comment I'll make on that, and I actually included it in the draft letter to state water contractors is that previously, because the license had been dragging on, the signing, they had kind of a soft handshake, we'll call it, agreement to try to find some funds to help us find other sources of grant funding. Unfortunately, with the change in players at state water contractors, and some changes here within the committee, that had not occurred yet. So that's kind of a sort of high level of the letters. All of you have had the opportunity to see them in the communications that I sent out last week. And I believe Chairperson Pittman and I are looking for any feedback that you might have. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate that. Also, having any of the folks in the room that would like to comment on them, these are draft letters, and if there's something we're missing or whatever, please let us know. This is kind of like the body is what the intent of the body was said, so I think State Parks had a couple questions. Aaron, would you like to suggest or comment on the letters? And realizing, I know you guys got a shortage of personnel and whatnot, I understand that, so. There you go. Yep. Oh, one more time. When the red's off, it's good. There you go. You're good.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, I didn't really have any questions. I did have a statement, though. If you guys, for clarification of where the concerns are, I'm an avid trail user myself. I probably average 25 to 50 miles a week on our trails, and I just ran them yesterday just to kind of see. I don't see any huge concerns on the state park trail system.
Okay.
We always have improvements, and with the recent heat after the rains, we're going to get a bloom. There's probably 4 to 5 spots that will need work at some point, but it's very short and limited. So
Okay.
I don't see it. And even looking at a lot of Feather River Rec and Park District and the city's trails, there's some spots, but it's still not in a horrible shape. So
Okay.
there's definitely those issues like under the bridge.
Yeah.
But for a letter to be written to say, hey, here's what we'd like you to do, or here's our concerns, it would be helpful if we had more
Details.
of a location, because we have 88 miles of trail.
Yeah.
And so which part of that 88 miles of trail are you seeing concerned with? Because
Okay.
I've gone over probably 80 of it, and like I said, I'm not seeing huge concerns.
Okay. It's a good comment. I appreciate that.
And so, but if there's definitely specifics, and I know I met with Representative Brandt, we talked 2 months ago, and a lot of the concerns that got brought up last time were not state park trails. They were actually Feather River Park District or Oroville trails. So again, just if we have more detail of what the concerns are, so we can address those, because it's definitely a passion of mine, and so I want to make sure we stay up on them.
Can I say something?
Yes, sir.
The one of the things I noticed is a lot of the bike trails they use gravel on some of the turns. There's no camber to the turns. I know it would take a change in the way the trails are built, but I mean, with slight changes, you could make them much more bike friendly. The ones that are bike trails. Dead Cow Trail, is that closed now?
They've been working on it. We had the hillside that collapsed
Right.
during the storms.
Right.
And they have been working on that. I don't know if it got finished yet.
Right.
It should be done within the next couple of weeks, that was my understanding.
Yeah, I think from my point of view, if you could make the trails that were bike trails, I mean, little things, sewing some camber into the turns and stuff, you know, making it more bike friendly instead of, right now they seem to be just like kind of a 2-track dirt road. There's no real bike friendly trails in our area, and if they were, they would be the horse trails that you're not supposed to ride, which everybody rides anyway. So, and I know that's just a change in, you know, the style of making the trail is all it would be. Maybe importing a little dirt, maybe throwing up some rock berms to throw some dirt against, not put gravel in turns, stuff like that.
We can definitely look at that.
Yeah, the trail, for example, going from the end of the dam there up to the lookout tower is a real good example. I mean, walking it, running it, you're fine. But if you'll notice, a lot of the turns for some reason, people have put gravel in them. And being on a bike, going through gravel, and also coming down from Dead Cow Trail back down to the bridge and the trail that goes to the backside of the parking lot there for the spillway. Same thing, for some reason, they threw a bunch of gravel in it. It's not really conducive to but
Okay.
just a change.
No, that's helpful. We can look at that. We do follow, State Parks has its own policy for trails and how we design them, and they're not meant for a lot of the typical bicycle enthusiasts who want to go high speed and high speed, low drag type thing. And so that is something that would have to be a redesign or recalculation. And I know DWR had some of that in the new FERC project, or the new, to do one of those kind of, and I forget the term, I apologize, the contoured trails, the demonstration, yeah.
Yeah.
And so that would be a different style that we don't currently have anywhere in the park system that I'm aware of. But as far as the gravel, like I said, I'll go back and look at the team. If you can meet me online and we can identify some of those locations again, and I'd definitely be happy to go look at those and see if we can, within our policy, modify it to make it easier or better for a better experience for people.
Now,
Committee Member Brandt, go ahead, Brent.
my hope for the trails would be that Parks and Recreation and these questions of ownership and who's doing what in what areas could all be ironed out, worked out on a semi-monthly or quarterly basis. At least we get together. I see our trails potential here as being the best in the state of California. Bicycles, motorcycles, four-wheel drive, equestrian trails, runners, walkers, bird watchers, it doesn't matter. And we've got the area to advertise it and develop it and groom it and make it the best in the state. And it isn't. I'll venture you can drive down the Highway 70 across the Feather River near the headquarters of the state of California's water resource. And you won't see a sign that says the best trails in the state. Stop here at our equestrian center, our bicycle center, our this, our that, the other thing, where people just pull in and fill the parking lot. And people who are all over the state and the country are looking for places to get out and recreate. And it doesn't take $1 million. You don't need a houseboat. You don't need 4 launch ramps. You need a parking lot. You need a bike rack. You need a restroom. Be nice if you had a shower. Why can't we come together and make this thing work? Kind of.
Appreciate that. I think one of the things that if I may add, I put some committee members on that trails committee, but I also need to put all the jurisdictions that have trails in their jurisdiction as part of that committee. Bob will take care of that so that when we meet, so we can find out, who's responsible for what. I mean, we're looking at state parks, we're looking at the city, we're looking at BCSO, we're looking at everybody that would respond to an
Park
event
district.
on the trails. What was the other?
Park District.
Oh, the Park District. So that's part of the ad hoc, the reason for the ad hoc committee. We have committee members, but we're going to invite all the agencies so that we all have an understanding of where and what jurisdictions we play and how they all merge together. And I think that's a great suggestion, and I kind of forgot about it. I'm glad that you raised that, Committee Member Brandt. I think that we need to bring that together, and I think we'll amend the letter and just look at a process for us reporting a trail improvement need. That would be probably better in the letter than to just say broadcast if there are certain problems, because you can't chase down certain problems if you don't know where the world they are. So
Right. I mean, I can tell you, I'm going to ORAC next week. And I mean, one of the things over the storm, I've been extremely impressed with my staff is how quickly, with all the trees that came down this winter,
yeah,
I mean, within a day, they were taken care of and they were out and the trails were back open.
yeah, that's cool.
I mean, they did amazing work.
Yeah.
And even the way they're designed, I mean, you can go run the trails the day after a heavy storm
Right,
and not get muddy and destroyed.
right.
I mean, they drain well. The staff do a pretty good job on them. And so
Well, and
hearing
you-
there's issues, that's like I said, I definitely want to
Yeah.
fix those issues.
You bring up a good point, because if there is a trail damage somewhere around town, many of us don't know who's responsible for that section of the trail. Whether it's rec district, city, county, wherever the case may be. So I think that's the biggest part of the Trails Committee, is to define all that stuff and then have a contact point for where they can identify. Did we ever get the trails marked with some kind of GPS device? I know that was talked about. I think it was put on the one around the forebay. There's some GPS markers, but I don't know if that ever got completed.
So there are several maps out currently. Department of Water Resources has a very nice map that's online
Yeah.
that shows where the mile markers are. We have an internal map with CAL FIRE that has a map that has all the GPS coordinates for each mile marker.
Okay.
But that's not a public document.
Right.
And then we have other just trail maps.
Yeah.
So I mean, and then as far as mile markers go, we maintain the ones within the state park system. And then we've been contracted in the past with DWR to put them on like the after bay.
Right.
To have the
Right.
continuity of the program.
Yeah.
But that's not a maintenance thing that we maintain.
Right.
That was a, can you put these out for us at the mile markers? And that's what we did.
Well, I think that's my hope with the Trails Committee, so that we can have one point that we get all the information together, and just like you're saying, the mile markers are necessary not only for the individual using the trail, but if they do have an emergency online, how do you describe where you are? You know, and you gotta say mile marker something or whatever, because there's a lot of trails to go find people. So noted, and I think we'll make the amendments to the letter, sending, you know, we're trying to develop a process to communicate where and what, if there is damage, who do we contact? That, I think, is more important in the letter than anything else.
Okay, can I add one more thing?
Sure.
So, and Eric, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but the supplemental benefit fund may not be the correct venue for this. We already report recreation issues to ORAC, which is the advisory committee for recreation.
Right.
And so I don't know, I mean, it seems a bit of like it's a creep for the intent of the SBF.
Right.
And that's just our take from looking at, from
Sure.
state parks, and putting that out there as something to be considered, and I don't know if DBR wants to weigh in on that or not.
Yeah, I was going to actually mention that a little bit. You know, the city has a seat on the ORAC committee, and so
Right.
you know it's definitely a way to go. And you know, when it comes to like reporting maintenance issues, you know, certainly state parks and DWR we're available anytime to hear those. You know, because we don't always know exactly when something like a tree does fall or some issue comes up. So I was kind of thinking the same way that Aaron was about just, as far as what the Supplemental Benefits Fund Committee, the purpose of the committee is to disperse the funding from the SBF. And so, it's just a concern I saw when I read through these letters. Just, it just seems like it is, it's kind of going out of the focus of what this committee is.
Right.
And, I've been on groups before where, that starts to happen and it just doesn't, it just usually it becomes a problem for the group. So, and in fact, maybe I can just, expand on that a little bit. I've been thinking about this. What's the committee right now, is running out of money, right? I mean, we, have gone kind of through this phase of funding, and the $11 million now is basically they're spoken for or about to be spoken for, and really the next phase of this committee is, the new FERC license. It's on a 50-year license term, it'll be $1 million a year for the committee. And and I'm just thinking about what this committee can do to get to that, because that's really be the focus of the committee is how to proceed with
Right.
that. So anyway, and that was what I was thinking when I read the through the letter to the Department of Water Resources. I mean, it's fine. I appreciate the support for us. In trying to
Sure.
get the new FERC license, but we've already been doing that. I mean, it's something that DWR has been doing. We've been encouraging FERC to issue the new FERC license for some time now, and I feel like that only is going to go so far, and I think it would be really better for this committee to direct, instead of writing a letter to DWR, write a letter to FERC and, send a letter to FERC and say, hey, the settlement agreement is a really good thing for this community. And, we support you issuing the FERC license, as soon as possible. And that's something we could work on all signing, here, on this committee. The Federal Recreation and Parks District, the City of Oroville, State Water Contractors, State Parks, DWR, the Chamber of Commerce, just so a collective group effort, and I'm sure my management would fully support doing something like that. And so I know that's just one idea. There could be some other brainstorming ideas. But when I read these letters, obviously there was some time put into crafting these things, and it just seems like it would be a better directed effort going towards FERC getting that new FERC license issued, because that's what's going to give the money to this committee for it to proceed with the projects that are going to come. We don't even know what those are yet. A lot of them.
Right.
And what's being asked for in the letter is a project that's in that new FERC license. So it would generate that project automatically because it will become a requirement to DWR along with a lot of other
Right,
recreation as well. So
Well, I appreciate your discussion. I think part of what stirred this effort is the funding for the remainder of the trail underneath the bridge into the Feather Recreation Park District. We got to talking about trails, and then it kind of rolled that. So I appreciate your discussion, and it's a good reminder. Our job is to distribute funds for projects, and I think we interpreted the ability to get the trails in shape so that, you know, any other projects, and we're hoping that we see enough funding for the finish of the trail underneath the bridge, which is getting close. We're not there yet, right, Victoria? Not yet, okay. But the last meeting we had, we dedicated the remaining funds we had to that project to get it going, so, yeah.
Just real
Here-
quick,
Go ahead,
one thing
DeLong.
I see with the whole SBF, also another issue is in the FERC agreement.
Shannon, your mic's on mute.
In a FERC agreement, we're scheduled to get like we spoke of earlier, a mountain bike demonstration area. The city of Reading has built a mountain bike park. I mean, nobody's going to come to a mountain bike demonstration area. Like it's an old agreement, and I don't know. Maybe there is a way once the FERC license is signed to change some of that stuff, but it's outdated.
Yeah, Shannon, you know, I was actually talking to Andy about this today. That term demonstration trail, I've never liked that name, but I think at the time that it was written, they weren't sure what to call it. But basically, it's a new mountain bike trail. I think the idea is to have a trail with bank turns and to be a little different than what, you know, is kind of our standard trail that we have at our project, which are more the flat trails. But they didn't have an actual plan for it yet, so I think they were just trying to pick something to put the commitment in there that it will be a requirement in the new FERC license, but they didn't know exactly what it was. So then they picked a route that, you know, was sort of a guess on a map, so it's not etched in stone as far as where it is, too. So.
You know, I believe that what we have here is gravity. We have water flowing downhill. We have hills. It doesn't cost anything once you build the trail, once you put the feature in the river. It just occurs naturally, you know, and I think we're really missing out. And other communities are blowing it up. I mean, whitewater parks are going up everywhere. Mountain bike trails are going up everywhere. And it just, we seem to be way behind the curve. But maybe it's something that can be, if it's not etched in stone, I would say that's good.
Yeah,
because-
and just, you know, just so the committee understands too, that project is part of our recreation plan, so it's not an SBF project, so, you know, it's actually gonna happen, you know, it doesn't affect the 50 million,
Outside
I
of
guess.
it,
It'd be.
right, yeah.
So, that project's, you know, coming out of a separate program.
Eric, your comment that the city has a seat on ORAC, yes, they do. The Recreation District doesn't. The Recreation District has a 700 square mile district that it provides recreation for, and we're excluded from that committee. So we don't have a seat on it. So if we have a committee where we have a seat, then we can have input. You know, if you don't want our input in your trails project, see, we've got to work together. Mm-hmm. It's got to be a combined effort. We want the state parks to have the notoriety and the employees that are required for the number of people that are coming here to use our trails. Right. We all want to do the same thing, but we've got to come together to do it. And that was the idea of a trails committee here.
And I'm not opposed to having a meeting with all the agencies. And I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
If we all meet together, I have no problem with that. I'm just saying this venue. But I would also expand it to Fish and Game and also bring in Explore Butte County, who's advertising our trails heavily
Yes.
for us.
Exactly.
So it's not, I don't think it's an SBF, but I have no problem meeting. And I think everybody's been around. I will always come to a meeting. And I support that. I think the venue was all I was pointing out. But I would also include other agencies besides just who's on SBF.
Right.
Because Fish and Game has access, and they do stuff with trails. And Explore Butte County, though, like I said, they've been a huge partner with us in the last few years, advertising our trails and kind of pushing that out, that message for us. Mm-hmm. And so I think not keeping them in the room, they know, they've been doing studies, so they know what people are wanting and what they like.
Right.
The other big topic, since I have the mic for 1 second, too, with these demonstration trails or the mountain bike trails, one of the other big conversations that we need to have before we do those trails is all these e-bikes.
Yeah.
I'm seeing more e-bikes than I see any other regular bike anymore, which changes the whole
Picture.
perspective.
Yeah. it
Because
does.
most of these e-bikes, and we've talked about it in other meetings, so if I'm repeating, I apologize, but they can switch from a 1 to a 2 to a 3 class with just a click of a button, which means that you now have a mountain bike,
Right.
a motorized mountain bike that looks like a bicycle. And so those are factors that have to be, I would definitely want to have part of the conversation. I know state parks, we've been seeing an increase in accidents from those bikes. We've seen fatalities because people that aren't physically fit to go out to some of these remote areas, they'll go out 20 miles, they lose their bike or the bike dies and they can't get back.
Right.
And so those are things I would definitely want to discuss
Yeah.
as part of that committee and the overall group.
I would add to that, those bikes have created a huge fire problem in New York.
Here too.
Yeah, they're igniting,
Yeah.
and people are doing things. So this is a good discussion because it all comes to bear. One thing I would look at, the SBF does have an economic development concept, so maybe that's part of the reason why we're looking at that. The other thing is, I'd even ask, and she's not supposed to tell us anything, but she served, our councilman, our committee member Riggs is serving on our branding committee. And that probably needs to be part of this process too, I'm gonna imagine, without saying anything. I know you gotta be held to tight security.
I believe that the staff involved in that committee will be able to implement any updates to the trails along with the branding. So
Okay,
I
okay.
wouldn't worry too much about it.
And that's a branding for the city of Oroville. We're hoping that's coming out in late May, I believe, or June. So that all needs to be played together at the same time because obviously just in this room, we know that trails are a big deal. And they should be a big deal. So, good discussion. I think with that intake, anyone else got a comment about the letters?
Yes.
Sonny?
I don't know. I'd like to know how many people on this committee think that the Oroville area got a good settlement agreement in 2006. What's our attitude? Because I know what mine is, and I sat on those licensing committee meetings. And the very first meeting that everyone attended before they broke into subgroups, and David, I know you were there, they said, this project from the state water contractors and water resources is going to open up the relicensing to input and studies and committees and recommendations. But it's a negative power project. This is the dam, this is the forebay, this is the afterbay, this is the canal, these are the pumps, this is electronics, this is the hydraulics. Guess what? We're going to buy power to operate this project. So that means, you people, we're going to build a 900-foot dam where you have a power potential. We're going to take that power, and every bit of it, every penny, goes to the Southern California water contractors to get cheap water to the south. Not only we want water, we want it cheap. So that's off the table. Now, if we say, FERC, accept the license, we're looking at something that was negotiated, which I think we did a poor job because we should have walked out of the building when that was told to us. It's a dam in front of your town, and you get absolutely no power, and you can't negotiate for 1/1,000,000th of 1%. This is going to be our negotiation. Okay, we bought it, we did it. When we signed the agreement, between then and now, you know what that dollar is? That dollar is 62 cents. And we say, sign the license. Is that what we're accepting? Something that was $1 and it's now 62 cents, and by the time we get 50 years down the road, it'll be probably 25 cents? I think we should be opposing. How can you have an agreement, sit idle for that amount of time and say it's an agreement? It was never executed. They did not execute it. was not accepted. I think we should be pulling out of it. That's just one person's opinion, but I couldn't sign a letter that doesn't point out at the very, very minimum, bring it up to date for the money we've lost from your inactivity of not accepting it when we agreed to it. I've got another question here. Who can tell me the potential supplemental benefit fund adjustment for DWR's loss of power generation?
You talking about in the SBF agreement?
Well,
Yeah.
I was involved in the SBF agreement and agreed to agree with it. It's a schedule. I don't know who did the schedule, exhibit DF something, that explains how you can lose the money. And if they don't generate power, you don't get $1 million.
Yeah.
Well, there's water deliveries too.
Bob,
But the power can go down to 90%, from 1 million down to 100,000. That's what we get.
Okay, there is.
Bob,
Okay.
go ahead, Bob,
All right,
please explain.
So it's a rather complicated item to really probably try to understand, but there is, I'm going to try to just make it a little simpler. DWR.
Thank you, Aaron.
Has the right to withhold funds if power wasn't generated at a certain amount.
Right.
However, they have to give us the money eventually, and there is a.
No, it says right
No,
in
no,
there,
no,
it
no,
says right
Bob.
in there they don't.
They
You're
don't,
not, I've got it here,
okay.
paraphrased a little bit. I tried to shorten it. I want to go right to the power one, because that's the grit of it. It's not so much, you can get paid back possibly for water shortages. On electrical, you can't. The associated cost increase would be passed on to the Southern California water contractors as a higher wholesale power cost. Because the portion of this cost that would be absorbed by the Southern water contractors as opposed to passed on to the retail customers is unknown. Because of that, the revenue adjustment that the Southern water contractors would face assumes, we all know what assumes means, that the Southern water contractors would face significant financial hardship and provides relief to the Southern California water contractors in reducing annual payments to DWR, who in turn funds the Supplemental Benefit Fund. Therefore, a loss in power generation of 11 to 100% would result in corresponding reductions to the SBF. In case of the spillway disaster, I think that's 100%. I don't think they were operating the power plant when they flooded it and the rest. How about when the Fort Bay power plant burned up? Were those generator units still going after it burned up? No, they weren't.
Sonny, I agree with your commentary, but we didn't really agendize this item for this meeting. So we didn't give the public fair notice that we would be discussing the entire SBF agreement, which we could do at another meeting.
Well, the letter is to accept, to encourage them to sign an agreement that cuts our throat.
Well, we understand that. The issue is, and if we want to negotiate that particular letter, I think we probably need to fully agendicize it and/or amend it because it's really not a topic on our agenda today. The whole SBS agreement, if you want to throw that into an agenda, we could do that, say, at the next meeting and make sure it's properly noticed. But this letter here was just asking for the agreement to be, delivered. I mean,
Pushed, yes.
and I don't think we could all disagree with that. And as Mr. C mentioned, we're trying to get, the ball rolling. Our delay has been posted by outside of our resources in terms of FERC, in terms of NOAA fisheries, in terms of other agencies that have not allowed the agreement to move forward. I don't know that the SBF has any ability to say one way or the other. We signed an agreement, we're inside that agreement. We can certainly ask that agreement be, implemented as soon as possible, and that's within our scope to do it. But you're basically talking about a renegotiation of the entire agreement. And I think that needs to be agendized for a full meeting, not just done
Well-
here.
That would be fine, but to ask them to push the license forward, at least we could ask for updating the license to make it current,
Well, and
because we're so far
And
behind.
now that's a good suggestion. We could say in our letter to them, we see that the current situation is this, but we also see, as you mentioned, that we have a different value in the dollar. Could the license be issued with the possibility of having a discussion of an amendment or a Appendix A added? So that those discussions could continue outside of the issuance of the agreement. I mean, that's a little bit thinking off the
Yeah.
top of the head, but
Yeah.
that's a possibility.
If I may.
Yes, please do.
The last sentence here of that letter, it talks about it being drafted and agreed upon in 2006, and that's where I was thinking that you were going as far as maybe incorporating some language that obviously doesn't put the agreement at risk, so we'd want to get legal to look at that, but maybe
Right.
there's some language you can add in there to talk about the staleness of the agreement, the fact that there's been a lot of factors that have changed, and yes, we support the license to happen, but we also support and request that this agreement be revisited in some capacity.
Well,
Something
in
along those
addition, I
lines.
mean, we've had other instances like the spillway disaster that created a whole another ballpark of discussions, outside of our, ability to perform to that. So it seems reasonable what you suggest at that point and make some adjustments. Eric, you look like you have a
Well, yeah,
commentary.
I'm not sure exactly when to jump in about this, but I guess I guess I have some comments just about the settlement agreement itself. And I frequently hear from many of the conversations and meetings around the city of Oroville, people commenting on the settlement agreement, and I just don't get a good sense that people are that familiar with the agreement and all the terms. Now, Sonny, it sounds like you've read the agreement pretty closely, and there is there's a whole section on the supplemental benefits fund. There's a whole chapter. It's in Appendix B. It's Section B100 of the settlement agreement. It describes what the supplemental benefits fund is all about. The settlement agreement has a clause in there that I should back up for a second. This settlement agreement is the most generous settlement agreement in FERC relicensing history. So when people say that we haven't gotten anything out of this thing, I just that doesn't make any sense to me, because I actually looked back at from in 2001 when DWR, actually 2000 is when we started the whole process, but by 2001 we started meeting with the community, and we started actually constructing some projects around town. They were called at that time they called it the interim projects, and it was a package of projects. And then there was additional construction started at 2006 when the settlement agreement was signed. So that's something I want to point out. The settlement agreement isn't some future document. The settlement agreement is actually in play right now. The Supplemental Benefits Fund Committee is part of the settlement agreement. Right. So there's a certain portion of the settlement agreement that started right away upon signing back in 2006, and then there's going to be more that's going to happen after the new FERC license is issued. So this committee is part of that current phase. So I started adding up the projects that we have been doing since then, and I was really surprised when it got to be, I think it was $70 million of new recreation infrastructure that DWR has funded since 2001, and then I realized that I forgot to add a cell in my spreadsheet, and it went up to $88 million. So that's where it's standing right now. I've known over the years, because I've build a lot of this stuff. I knew it was a lot, but I didn't know how much. I didn't realize till I actually saw this list that took 2 pages on the spreadsheet to list out all these projects. You know, and of course, 11,270,000 went to the SBF. I mean, you know, this committee has done a great job of getting that money out into the community and constructing it. You know, this Eagle right here was paid for with SBF funding.
right.
You can go around town and find all kinds of projects that were, you know, paid for with the, you know, with
Right.
SBF funding. So the settlement agreement is in play right now. It is an agreement that, you know, is a 50-year agreement. And that was the agreement at the time, that it would, you know, we would be advocating for a 50-year license term. 50-year license term would be, you know, $1 million a year to the SBF. And there's a clause in the agreement that says that this agreement resolves all disputes. And what that really means is during the time, you know, throughout the relicensing negotiations during the 2000s, everyone, you know, was bringing up the, you know, the 30 years of broken promises or the 40 years of broken promises when Ronald Reagan, you know, came and, you know, made the speech in 1968. And actually see that mentioned in the letter, you know, that talks about 1968, which to me sort of conflicts with the first paragraph in the letter that talks about how, you know, the letter, you know, references the spirit of the settlement agreement. And so I know that 1968 is sort of this code for the broken promises thing, but really the settlement agreement resolved that. That was the whole idea of the settlement. That's why DWR agreed to this, you know, the most generous settlement agreement in relicensing history, was because it finally resolved those conflicts and or those disputes. And that's actually language from the settlement agreement. It says this agreement resolved, that says the purpose of this agreement is to resolve all disputes that, you know, have happened or can happen. So, you know, it's a 50-year agreement, and, you know, I encourage everyone to read it if you haven't, you know, that, especially the first sections that describe, you know, all of the you know, the purpose of the agreement and what it's all about.
And I think if this body writes a letter asking FERC to get the thing issued so we can move on and what we've all agreed to, that's probably an encouragement. But it also might be that we add an appendix, because I know certain things have developed that we didn't know about. One is, I know the depth of the river is pretty shallow now. And I don't know if it's because of the siltation or whatever, but you can pretty much walk across the river anywhere here in town. And I know there's improvements planned, but it's really shallow. And it's shallower than I've ever noticed, because I used to couldn't walk across it. And that's just a little issue that I mentioned, because it was created by a different situation, a different problem. So that's where I'm thinking that if we add to the letter that there are future things, we'd like some mechanism to talk about future things that we didn't know about, we didn't think about, that, you know, came up because of A, B, and C that was not predicted. My thinking is that would be a fair letter to send to FERC and have them give us some ability, like an appendix, but not to change the agreement. Leave the agreement like it is. We don't want to renegotiate the agreement, because, like you said, that's done. But there are things that are coming up that we didn't know about. I've heard many people tell me the river's gotten really shallow. And when it gets shallow, what happens is when we have higher water flows, the river banks get filled up more than they did before. Just an observation.
Well, you know, we have fisheries biologists that are out on the river on a
Right,
daily basis,
right.
and they are very well aware of the habitat conditions in the river, and we're actually, I'll be talking about it in a little while in my
Okay,
report, but
all right.
we have a, you know, project we'll be doing on the river this year to
Yeah.
add spawning gravel. And so, we do engineering hydrology analyses, and we have not seen that about the river being shut. Now, you know, rivers, Central Valley rivers especially, they do change from time to time. High flow events, gravel moves around. So it might be a place that you used to walk into that's
Right.
more shallow now, but that means it's deeper somewhere else, because, you know, they do change over time. That's
Well, the gray hair on me is like, I used to water ski on the river. Okay.
well,
and
yeah, but there was a flashboard
There
dam
was a
that
flashboard
created
dam,
a,
that's
you know,
true, yeah.
so.
Yes.
I just had a question. Eric, do you know the extent of dredging that took place along the Feather River right here on the flow channel after following the spillway incident? Because I'm not aware of any efforts to.
There has
dredge
not
that
been
river.
dredging on the Feather River. Now, there was up in the diversion pool, you know,
I'm
the,
aware
Yeah.
of that dredging, but just down here, after all the debris. Sent an email to Jada about salmon spawning habitat. Place, and
Oh, was that right?
to
Okay.
request some more clarification or support when it comes to that incident. I was here and I saw what 85,000 flows for down Feather River, and they're, we're experiencing 20,000. It's very significant. It's almost soccer fields, and considering what rain season and what's coming next
Right.
with the snowfall that we're going to be. Riverbend Park is experiencing significant flooding with the low level.
Right, and I actually was part of my report
Okay.
also was the flows. We're going to be going up to 20,000 tomorrow, actually. The flows are going up, and they
Right.
could go up higher than that in coming weeks because that snow melt's coming down. So, DWR doesn't create the high flows in the river. It's created by, Mother Nature. Right now, we have about 20,000 coming in, and we're basically matching inflows. Right, we can hold back a little bit more than's coming in right now because we're slowly but surely filling the lake. But other than that, we have to let it go for flood control purposes.
Oh, yeah, we know that.
And unfortunately, there's parts of Riverbend Park that are built in the floodplain, so they are going to flood periodically. When
The
the
flooding that we're experiencing now is significantly different than before the spill incident occurred. That's just what is not what we experienced post or pre-spill incident.
Well, the hydraulic analyses that we've done has not shown that there was really much of any deposition in this area. It was really more of a transport area. Now, further downstream, there has been some deposition. You go down to the Delta, of course, San Francisco Bay, but a lot of the material, well, the coarse material that came down from the spillway stayed in the diversion pool and was dredged out. So it was fine silts and suspended sediment is what made it downstream, but it didn't settle in this area. It actually moved down into lower portions of the watershed. So this area was really more transport than it was deposition during that 2017 event. Actually, the most recent events that we've been having as well.
I'm gonna
So
let-
Riverbend Park definitely had a lot of things that settled there.
Yeah.
It was it was very similar to, well.
There has been, I know down, some places I fish on the river, they did change after that event. We lost a riffle in one area, and there's actually, a material further downstream, and it was that, it's a natural bed load process to have materials move during high flow events. That's, so anyways,
I want to get to Councilman Riggs here real quick. Thank you, folks.
Eric,
Sunny, I got Councilman Riggs is up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Thank you. I have a few things. One, I think that maybe it would be beneficial if we moved reports to the top of the agenda so that they could share on what
Yeah,
they are
that's a
going to
good
share on,
idea.
and we don't bring in questions. That's just a new development from this conversation. But I'm thinking to get back on the agenda item, based on what I've heard, that we should remove the letter to state parks and to DWR, move forward with a letter to the state water contractors, and have a future agenda item with a letter to FERC to sign and add adjustments to the settlement agreement. And also a future agenda item in that same meeting to discuss all of the details within the settlement agreement so that we all share a broad knowledge and shared definitions on what the issues could be and how we can mitigate them.
and can I make one recommendation to that? I think before they get to actually taking action on the settlement agreement, we should have a discussion of the settlement agreement itself, just so we're all familiar with, because.
That's what I just said.
Yeah,
No, but have that discussion before you actually get to drafting a letter.
Oh, no, she wants us to put together a settlement 101
Oh,
class
okay, I'm sorry, I
first.
missed
Yeah.
that part. Okay, yes,
Yeah.
that, great idea.
But I think that we
Great
could
idea.
have a letter that
Right.
we start from, right? We have that discussion, and we have a letter that we can make adjustments
There you go.
to, so that it's making some progress.
right.
So that we're not talking about this letter in December.
And
Okay.
the letters, just so everybody's on the same page, these are drafts.
Right.
Right.
They have
right.
not been, they've been officially entered
Drafted.
into communication that the public can see because they're part of this meeting. But these are really drafts. They have not been sent to anybody.
And settlement agreement 101 means about what the existing settlement agreement is, right? We're not talking about like some future,
Right, right.
change
Right.
to it or something like that, okay.
Just the basic, what is it right now?
But-
And then we could take a letter from there and could provide any feedback on what might need to be adjusted.
Committee Member Brandt.
Eric, now you say the settlement agreement is in effect.
It is, yes.
$1 million a year isn't coming, right?
It will when the new license is
No,
issued.
I mean, it's not coming now, although
Correct.
the settlement agreement's in effect.
The settlement agreement has a schedule for that funding, and so it had some funding identified. Actually, we've given more than what we were supposed to give at this point in time, but it comes in phases, and there's a timing. And so the timing of the $1 million a year is after the license is issued.
Okay. Good discussion, folks. Thank you.
Sure.
I think we'll take direction from Committee Member Riggs, his comments, and Jonathan.
Yeah, as just wanted to make a comment
got
from the state water contractors and the draft in the letter, and I have my Feather River conceptual plan right here that is noticed in the letter, and as Bob noted, there has been some changeover in staff. Previously, my predecessor worked on this issue, and so I just want to kind of call out the last line of the letter that just calls for a dialogue, and I very much appreciate the opportunity to learn more about the Feather River conceptual plan, some of the history behind it, to get a better understanding of where everyone is on this issue and just have that discussion moving forward. So I appreciate the opportunity to have a dialogue and get myself educated and up to speed on a lot of the important issues in this area. So
Thank you, sir. Councilman, or Committee Member Riggs.
Thank you. In the spirit of that, are you planning to attend our meeting tonight to discuss the future of the Feather River?
Unfortunately, I can't. I wasn't aware of it, but I would be happy to attend future meetings, so I apologize.
Thank you. I'll make sure you know about them.
I was just, would you,
Right here.
well, go ahead and repeat that again to everyone with your mic on.
Thanks. 6 o'clock in this room to discuss the future of the Feather River, specifically bedrock to.
The city is sponsoring a meeting to deal with the issues. I can't make it myself. I have another meeting to go to, but it's to look at the Feather River in the low-flow channel and the city's direction. And actually, I think it's more of a thing to try to start achievable projects as soon as possible. And so we're looking for everybody's public input to come to that meeting. I think it'd be very valuable for anyone to come to that because we all have our great ideas, and the city is in position to help and get things done as best they can. So best way to do it, though, is put all our minds together and decide what that should be.
David, how was that?
It's been normal as a committee member meeting, but I'm going to tell you, lately we've had so many meetings.
It was publicized on Facebook, and there was also an article in the Enterprise Record or Mercury Register.
Yeah. It's difficult to get anything out, and this week alone, where I'm sitting on 7 meetings myself. So we all have a lot of busy things going on, and
The agenda was also mailed out to our entire email list.
yeah.
And it's not, there's not just one, there will be multiple ones,
Right.
so.
It's just the beginning of the process, so we can work on the recreation plan, but also the city's kind of taking the lead as the along the river, so. Appreciate anyone coming and your input, and we're welcome both visual input and personal input and electronic input. Yes, please.
Is it possible to check that the link? Because I signed up for it.
We'll put that on our list to take care of. Yeah,
And maybe I
right.
did something wrong, but.
No, thank you. Well, we need to know about that because we all have email issues that go on throughout the community, so I appreciate that. All right. I think we have enough direction at this point. Bob, what's our next item?
Pardon me? Wake up? No, I'm well awake.
Reports.
Yeah.
Now I think we can get to reports. Maybe we'll start with Eric.
Okay, I have some water data, but this is changing as we speak. So as of last night at midnight, the lake was at 877.48, so it's coming up quick. The flows to the Feather River out here outside the town here, 6,500 cubic feet per second. And then the high flow channel, after it picks up the release from the afterbay, is at 18,000 cubic feet per second. And we're going to be going up to a total of 20,000 tomorrow. That's total outflow to the Feather River. So far, we're at 61 inches of rain for the year. Normal would be, at this date, it'd be 47 inches or about there. So we're 127% of normal. So we're having just a great winter. And the lake's coming up fast. We're looking to fill. We're actually, having to increase releases just to not fill it up too fast. So it's going to be a good year. And, it's wet up and down the state. Actually, it's further south you go, the wetter it gets. So it's going to be a unusual year for us. We're going to be doing a 100% delivery to the State Water Project, which is pretty significant for us. I think the last time we did that, I think maybe the only other time was in 2006. So very, very significant to have that much water in California, especially when we were talking about, we were making preparations for drought this, back in December. I remember just, trying to do planning and just looking for another sour year, and then all of a sudden it just started raining. So it's been pretty amazing. Okay, so that's what I had for the water information. But I wanted to talk about a few upcoming projects, so you are aware. We have we mentioned a little bit about this earlier, but the Feather River spawning gravel project. So coming up, starting in July, we're going to be placing spawning gravel for salmon, and primarily salmon, but steelhead would benefit from this as well in the Feather River. This is a project using grant funds. So I wanted to point that out just so everyone understands. This is the type of project that we will be doing a lot when the new license is issued, but this current project actually doesn't have anything to do with our FERC license. The Natural Resources Agency had some Prop 68 funding that was extra. So a couple of years ago, the Resources Agency went to its departments and asked Department of Fish and Wildlife, asked DWR, do you have any good environmental projects you could spend this money on? And so we said, well, we could do a salmon gravel project. We did one back in 2014. We did one in 2017. So we kind of feel like we knew what we're doing with something like this. And they said, okay. So anyways, we got the funding, and we actually got some additional funding from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to increase the size of the project a little bit. But anyway, so it's a joint funded project, but it's all 100% grant funded. And so, so that project, we've got plans and permits put together. And so we'll be going out to bid very shortly, probably within the next few weeks. And construction should start the middle of July. And so this is a project that there's also there's probably going to be some work done at the lagoon at Bedrock Park.
Yeah.
And I say probably because we don't have every single T crossed yet on the agreement with the city, but we're getting there. And this is the city come and ask, can we use your contractor basically to do some work over in our area? So we actually incorporated it into our permit package, and so it's all ready to go from our side. So we just need to get that last few things done with the contract. In fact, I'm not sure, there could have been some things, some progress made today. I've just been away from my office. Okay, so that's the spawning gravel project, and let's see. Oh, and there may be a portion of the project we're not. It's looking like there may be a second phase of this project. The work in the river may be next year. So we're definitely going to do a project this year. But if there's some leftover, we might have to do some additional work next year. But we definitely have a project for this year coming up. Okay, the Brad Freeman Bike Trail project. So I saw in the letter, there's some mention of some thorns and stuff, and we have them on some of our trails, and it's kind of interesting because that's what this project is really about. That's where it started. About 3 years ago, maybe now, I was approached by a gentleman named Mike Morgan, who I think was a city council member at one time and was a chair at ORAC for many years. And
10 years ago.
Okay, yeah. I hadn't seen Mike in a long time, and so he attended an ORAC meeting and said, hey, he brought up the subject of goat heads on a section of trail that we have from Garden Highway to the Cherokee Bridge. This is the Brad Freeman Trail along the Power Canal, we're going on the north end of town. And he said that the trail is just about impassable now because of all the goat heads along there. And so we went out there and he showed me what he was talking about. He actually let me ride one of his bikes. He's a big bicyclist, and so we drove across there and we got down to the end of it, and he said, let's take a look at the tires. And sure enough, they were just loaded with goat heads. Now he has these like special tires with like some stuff on the inside that's self-sealed. I mean, it was pretty cool, but he said most people don't have tires like this, and people can't even walk their dogs along here anymore because the dogs get the goat heads. So anyways, we talked about possible solutions to this, and there's really not a lot of good solutions when it comes to goat heads on trails. Apparently, he says you can go out there and try to pull them out by hand. That's really about the only thing you can do. Spraying isn't that effective. And the goat heads are already there from the previous plants are still in the gravel and stuff. So anyways, long story short, he brought up the idea, what about just resurfacing it? What if just put an asphalt pad on it, and at least then you can go with the blower and do some maintenance on it every year and make at least a clean path for people to get from point A to point B through that area to make a through trail. And so anyways, long story short, that's what we're going to be doing. So we got some grant funding. It's a shared thing. DWR's putting in some of the money, and we're going to be implementing that this coming summer. It's about $700,000 project.
What section of the trail?
So this is from Cherokee Road. So it's on the north side of the Power Canal from Cherokee Road to Garden Drive. So basically, where you come out, if you're going to get on the freeway over by the Forebay,
Right.
that bridge right there, that's where the trail comes out right there. There's that pasture with the horses in it, and it'll go through there. And so, anyway, we're going to fix the bollards because the bollards aren't that great right now. So we're going to be changing those out, resurfacing the trail, and there's a small section that through all this we realized wasn't on our property. It was on a piece of adjacent private property. The next door neighbor didn't even know and don't need to be. So we're going to reroute the trail just to keep it on our property. So yeah, that's going to be this coming summer.
You know, it brings an interesting comment about the new electric bikes. They have some wider tires and wider devices. I wonder if the bollards are gonna allow the electric bikes to make it through.
They're going to be 88, like I think 30-inch. They'll meet that
Okay,
that standard.
all right.
Right
I
now,
just
they're
raised the
they're
issue.
pretty narrow. So
Yeah, but I agree with Mr. Wright that the electric bikes are becoming hugely popular. And I have a son-in-law that's a salesman for him, and he's selling tons of those things.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, they're interesting. My next door neighbor has one, and it power assists. So he actually does still pedal, but it just gives him a little
Yeah.
extra, boost on the hills.
yeah.
Eric?
Go ahead.
Eric, you weren't at the last meeting, but the last meeting I attended on the Supplemental Benefit Board on my prior term, so a couple years ago,
Okay.
last meeting, you told me that you had a project designed on the diversion pool, and you're going to build the road to the same specifications as would be required when you put in the car top boat launching and the restroom facilities and all that at the diversion pool at the end of Lakeland.
Yeah. So
And you were optimistic. That was,
that's a good project. This is going to develop a new day use area on the Lakeland Boulevard side of the diversion pool. Right now, when you go to Lakeland Boulevard, you drive in. There's a turnaround and trailhead, but it's not next to the water. You got to go about a half mile to get down to the water. This project's actually going to construct a new road that's going to take you down to the water, and then we're going to build facilities right on the
wow.
water.
Okay.
It's going to be just a fantastic facility.
Yeah.
So, and that's in the new FERC license and the recreation plan for the new FERC license. At the same time, right now we are doing, a few years ago we had a construction project to build replace the 13.8 kilovolt line that's in the ground in that area. So we're gonna have to. So the project's gonna require a lot of construction activity, and so at the time they were considering building that road to that location for that construction project, and then when they leave, the road would be there for us to have for the future recreation site. So it looks like they've made some changes to the design of the project, and they got a big delay on the project for some issues related to the spillway recovery, and they put the permits for that package in and the approval in with the rest of the spillway work that was going on at that time, and then FERC had a delay for a couple of years. So they just recently, back in February, FERC finally approved all that, and so they're in the process of restarting that. So they're going to do that 13.8 power line project. Doesn't look like we're going to get the road from that project. So now it's going to probably fall on us, which is going to be more from out of my recreation budget to build the road, but it's the way it goes. But
Is that
we're not going to
Powerline-
get it right now.
Is that Powerline PG&E or DWRs?
It's DWRs.
Okay.
It connects
From the powerhouse
the diversion dam to the power plant,
Okay.
to a high power plant. So anyways, yeah, so it's a buried line, and there's a comms line there, but I don't think they're doing anything with it. Actually, I'm not sure about that. But in any event, they're going to be trenching that trail. In fact, that's going to be require a trail closure for a period of time when they're working along
Gotcha.
the road. So, so right now they're actually teeing that up again. They're getting the engineers going, and it requires some additional FERC approvals that they're working on right now. So we don't have a schedule yet for when that project's going to happen, but it very well could happen this summer or the fall.
well, before our last meeting, I drove out there to make sure it wasn't done yet because I didn't think it was done. And the overlook area and the parking lot and the restrooms and tables was locked with a chain and there were about seven keys on a bar, and then there was a chain around it and another lock on it. Is that out of commission or why?
Was this to go on the lower road or?
No, to go into the horse,
Yeah, it shouldn't be locked. It should be open daily.
It's the old observation parking lot that they had for the building of the diversion dam, is what he's talking about.
And they had that locked down good.
That's called a horse parking area now.
And I was wondering if
Okay.
there was some policy.
Yeah, it should be open daily, so,
Yeah. Okay. No, you want to talk.
trail, or there's a
I mean, the main gate,
Yeah.
right at the beginning.
right where that house is on the left?
Yeah, well, yeah. Well, you can get to where the road goes down to the railroad haul bed, but the main gate going into the overlook and the area
Okay.
was
Okay, we'll take a look at
Yeah,
it.
we'll take a look.
That needs to be open. so,
Securely.
Yeah, it should be open daily.
They've had a couple issues. I know I talked to Jack. I talked to Jack, so there was a couple incidents month where they didn't get open. Security
Okay.
fusion with new.
Yeah, I think I was middle of the day, but I don't know what day it was, and
Okay.
Well, we can check on it.
just
Do you
surprised.
have? No? Okay. All right. Eric, any more?
One more thing. Okay, so, I know, then I'm done, I'm sorry. It's got a
all
lot
right.
going on right now. Okay, so in this coming summer, well, we're going to be installing a fish monitoring station on the Feather River. This is in the low-flow channel down about 5 miles downstream of Oroville. And we actually had a meeting last night about this here in Oroville. Some fishing guides showed up, gave us some good input on this. And so it's basically this fence that goes across the river. It's kind of this floating fence that boats can slide over it, when they're like a drift boat can just slide right over the top of it. But it's mostly submerged underwater. The salmon swim up, they get to this blockage, and then they go along the edge looking for an opening. And then in the opening, they go through, and we have an underwater camera right there. So then every couple of days, a biologist can come in, download the data, get the video data, and then go count all the fish. So it's a way to be able to count all the fish without having to touch them. We get species, we get size, and very importantly, something we've never been able to get before is run timing. We're going to start knowing right when the salmon show up, and so it's going to be a game changer for us in just having that much more knowledge about the salmon and when the spring runs show up and when the fall runs show up. We've never been able to get an estimate of fall run versus spring run on the Feather River because spring run will come up and then they just hang out. Fall runs start coming up during the summer and they all kind of intermingle. And you can't tell the difference when you're just going out there counting up the dead carcasses on the river. You get an overall abundance estimate for the total number of fish in the river, but you don't know how many spring run versus how many fall run. So it's finally going to be able to give us that data. So
Amazing. We're going to have cameras on the fish. We're going to have cameras on our license plates in this town.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to have cameras on everything, aren't we?
Yeah, what we'd like to do is publish if you remember, but at Red Bluff Diversion Dam, they had a fish ladder, and they would every week the newspaper when the salmon were going through would have the fish counts on how.
Right.
So we're going to have something like that. We have
Good.
like on our website, or we haven't figured out exactly how we'll publish it yet, but we're going to have
Right.
something like that.
Won't interfere with tubers.
No, tubers, there is a portage too. If you want to walk around the side of it, you can actually walk on the top of this thing, but, and there's a boat gate on it as well. So,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, a tuber's probably gonna have to, lift themselves and just step over it, but it's in shallow water and there's a portage, a clearly marked portage. We got signage. We had, CAL FIRE at the meeting yesterday, and, Butte County Sheriff's Office and, our local game warden, lieutenant. And, we've done site visits with them out to where this is. And once we install it, we'll be going over, safety devices. We'll put signs at the boat ramps so people know where this is at. This kind of device is used in a lot of places. They have one on the Stanislaus River. They've been operating for 20 years, and it hasn't been a problem. So it's
That's nice to hear.
yeah. So.
All right. State water contractor, Jonathan, anything to tell us?
Nope, no reports on my end.
All right. Bob?
Mine is a written report that you get every month. So
Any questions on the report?
occasionally
submitted?
I get a question back, but I think for the most part, people are accepting and enjoying what I'm
Committee
saying.
Member DeLong.
Just one question. In the report, and it was last year, YMCA received $75,000 for a pool and locker room restoration on their building.
From the
And then they left the
SBF.
building. What happened with that money is, from what I
Sure.
understood, they didn't
Okay.
even start the process.
I'll be happy to answer that. It was a 20, get my dates right here, a 2020 grant of the SBF. It was then extended. They completed the work and they basically gutted and rebuilt the bathrooms at the YMCA. They received their final funding in December of 2022, and that was shortly after I came back on board, and it was multiple communications because they didn't understand that they needed to send proof of payment. And so I finally received the canceled checks. The unfortunate thing is that that building is now closed, so the $75,000 has been spent. And
As an-
spent,
so it is-
spent within the terms that the
It's an
contract
asset
called
of the
for.
building, and it's an asset of the current building. the
Yes,
facility,
yes,
yeah.
it is,
Okay.
yeah. And it was done within the contract that was approved by the SBF.
Okay.
No one.
YMCA. They still own it. It's up for sale. I mean, they actually well, I'll tell you, they actually offered it for the to the city.
$75,000
Yeah.
bathroom.
It was offered to the city, and we just don't really have a purpose for it. Committee Member Riggs.
I wonder if it would be beneficial in future agreements when the license is signed and we get to do that. If it would behoove us to say, like, if the property in which an investment was made is sold within 5 years of
a
final
good point.
receipts, that
Once
that's
they
due
claw
back.
back.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Not like forever, but a reasonable amount, life
would agree.
expectancy
I would
of
agree.
such
Yeah,
projects.
the early contracts that the SBF did just prior to my coming on board 15 years ago, there were no sunset clauses.
Mm-hmm.
And we had one that went on for 8 years. And so shortly after I came on board, all new contracts had a 1-year sunset clause or less. Many of them have been renegotiated because they couldn't finish the terms, like the Brad Freeman Trail, the veterans, et cetera. But at least the sunset clause, they have to finish it. The clawback, though, is a good idea. I will check with legal to see if that is something that we can legally do, though.
Well,
Okay.
lesson learned.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing it up.
I do know also that downtown Oroville has a grant that's out and is expected to expire in June, and they are intending on writing a letter for
Is that the
Miners Alley.
Miners Alley?
Yeah.
Okay. Who should I be communicating with? Because I've asked for copies of contracts, copies of canceled checks. They requested payment, but I need to know that the people have been paid.
The treasurer is Aaron Lackey, and you and I could get together to help
Okay, pop
facilitate
me
that.
the email, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all. The SBF will now call for any agenda items for the future from the committee. Any agenda items to be posted?
I just hold the ones that I brought up earlier.
Okay. And Committee Member DeLong?
Eric, if next time, I just read an article I thought was interesting. They're calling this a record year, DWR is. If you could enlighten us maybe on the next meeting, just curiosity, I'm kind of a nerd, but apparently DWR's changed what normal is. So it's not necessarily the biggest water year, but it's being called the biggest water year, if that's actually true. And also, with all the fires we've had in the area, if you have any idea of the amount of acre feet lost to sedimentary deposits into our lake over the last couple of years. I think you guys did some LiDAR on that, but I think the lake still is the same acre foot on paper as it was when the dam was built.
Okay,
If you have any idea on any of that, just.
I don't, I
now,
can, I
but
know we
I'm
did a
just curious.
report, regarding the watershed, and I could take a look at, maybe bring the conclusions from the report. I think they did have a summary of conclusions that they have published, so I can take a look at that. As far as the water year, I've heard, when talking about like the snowpack, there's been, as I understand, it's been hard to say, it's hard to compare with some previous years because prior to like a certain point, like in the 1950s, I guess they recorded snow differently, and so to say it's more snow than something that happened prior to that, it's kind of hard to say. So it's one of the biggest snowpack years. But as far as water year, 2017, I think as far as how much water came in, that's the biggest, that's the highest one.
Okay.
But that was snow and a lot of rain. A lot of that snow melted very quickly.
Okay, anyone else? Yes.
Yeah, Eric, could you bring the amount of funding that would have come to the supplemental benefit fund from 2000 from 2006 until now, had the agreement been in effect, you have the power figures, you know what power you generated, and that's my biggest concern, that the board is aware of that, what we would have been funded had the agreement been in effect and approved by FERC when it was signed. So we've got some good long bit of history to know what the potential is for the future, and particularly on the power basis.
Yeah,
We don't-
I'm not understanding the question. I can tell you what, right now, I have the numbers on what the SBF in the different phases of the SBF, what those numbers are, if that's what you're.
No, I'm looking for, had we signed the agreement and lost funding because of the lack of power generated by the project, what we'd been penalized from the $1 million a year. Had the agreement gone into effect when we signed it, and FERC said, good, this agreement goes into full force right now, so we get $1 million a year. Now, that's based on the power generation and water deliveries.
Well,
So now we've got we've got a history.
I understand that.
That-
Let me help you with something. You're saying that there's a profit coming off of the power generation of this power plant. That's not true. The state water contractors have to buy more power than all the power plants create. If my last numbers might be an updated number, that 37% of the power that comes is only that amount that supplies the state water contractor's electric bill. Because pumping the water up over to Tehachapi's is far more expensive than the power generated or revenues generated off the power plants at San Luis, at Thermalito, and at Oroville. So maybe that's the comparison that Sonny's looking for to understand that particular issue, because the largest purchaser of electricity in California is Department of Water Resources.
We are. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
something that I haven't mentioned is our governor in the states looking at eliminating water-generated power. And my concern is the money that we are or are not going to get, should our power be cut back, whether it's from burning up generators or overflowing the dam or whatever happens, or if it's from a state law that you can't use your power generation by water if there's enough renewable energy to use, you've got to buy that and use it. And we're saying that if you lose power, we lose our funding.
Well, and part of that problem is the state legislature has declared hydropower as a non-regenerative or non-sustainable power. So it's the legislature that's creating this problem. I think, though, to answer Sonny's committee member Brent's question is just how much power revenue comes off the power plants and then how much is purchased by them, so we can get an understanding to share that with the public. I know it from just being around forever and understanding the system, because I know there's 13 pumps at O'Neill that pump the water up the hill, and there's only, I think there's only 15 turbines that generate power. So, there's an imbalance there. It'd be nice to have maybe a report on that imbalance that occurs. Because if in fact that this legislature decides that hydropower is not going to be used anymore, we all got a problem in this state. We all got a huge problem.
Yeah.
Because that's just not real. But yes, go ahead, Jonathan.
Oh, I was just I'm happy to come back with figures, but just for reference, I think the contractors pay anywhere between $300 and $500 million a year in just energy costs for the state water project.
Yeah.
So,
And that's just, it's a way to give us a perspective, I think would be very helpful. Thank you.
I think Eric gets my point.
Well,
It's what we would have lost
Yeah.
based on,
If the FERC had signed the
yeah, if they'd signed it,
agreement
if
and
it'd
you
been
were able
in
to
force,
generate power
we would have gotten X number of dollars.
instead of
Well,
$1 million a year.
You cut the percentage from 10 to 100, that's 90%. We can lose 90% if you generate no power for a year in the Oroville plant. We get 10%, we get $100,000.
Well, as we've been talking, actually looked in the settlement agreement, and it's not based on power generation. So there's not a correlation between power generation and what you're talking about, Sonny. It's I think it's water delivery. So
Yes.
it's the allocation. It's the allocation of water.
Water
It's-
delivery.
No, I'm looking at the power one.
Okay.
And that's where it's non-refundable. It says it's non-refundable.
E8. Oh, I'm getting an advisement to look on the next
Uh,
page. Huh?
Well,
This is the section of the SBF I don't look at a whole lot. So
well, what we'll do is we'll look forward to, Eric, you bringing that back to us so we can all see that and have its numbers in front of all of us, so we all have an interesting information about this discussion.
all right, well, yeah, I think it's probably be good for us to revisit this because I haven't looked at this in a while. So
Right.
I'll read that. Something else I wanted to mention. Oh yeah, one other thing regarding the the way that FERC licensings work. When the settlement agreement was signed in 2006, that was part of that process that triggered a bunch of funding for the SBF, but then and other projects and activities. But it was not it was known that the license wasn't going to get issued the next day because we still had to complete the environmental impact report process. There's a 401 Clean Water Act 401 certification. There's a whole process that has to go on. So it really wasn't expected. Everyone knew it was going to be probably at least a 5-year process to get to actually have the license issued. It was really about 2012 or so, because like our biological opinion with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, they actually gave us a 5-year extension because they figured, okay, it's going to take that long for the license to get issued. So really it wasn't, it was about 2012 or so is when we really thought that, 2011 was when we thought we were going to get the new license. We got our 401 cert in early 2011, so that was when we thought, okay, this is it. All we need is the biological opinion from NIMS. And NIMS had already written a draft. We were just waiting for them to finalize it, and then it took them 5 years to finalize the document. So, but at that point, that was when we really thought we were close.
Yeah. It'd be good to have a breakdown so we can all talk and understand that information. And
Okay.
for the next meeting, let's have that
Okay,
together.
that's
Be good for everybody?
be worthwhile. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, folks, thank you. Last call for any agenda items. I think we've got that discussion pretty good. I will call for adjournment. The meeting will be adjourned. The next regular meeting will be, the Supplemental Benefits Fund will be held Wednesday, July 26th.